I thought I was failing miserably at being a wife, a mom, my career. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I just leaned into like faith and meditation.
Her house, her dogs, all literally burned to the ground, but it launched a marriage and a partnership that now is having a ripple effect through the world in terms of how people are healing faster and better through FetTech and all of their amazing products.
I'm generous to a fault. Like I will do anything if I feel, and I think most people will, if they feel valued and appreciated. And now I'm learning, if you follow the joy, and if it's not a fuck yes, it's an absolute no.
Fuck yes.
Fuck yes means yes. If it's not a fuck yes and I'm not excited,
it's a no. Yeah.
It's a no. It's a hard no until you feel it's a fuck yes.
Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now, but I just enjoy how much we continue to evolve these conversations, to have the real, raw dialogue that needs to be normalized in society. And today we've got a guest that I have zero doubt is going to have the ability to do that. In fact, I've had the chance to meet her more than once. She was on one of my other shows. And last time when we were about to record, we had to pause and pivot and reschedule, but it gave us a chance to really download and get to know each other a little bit better. I was introduced to her by Juliette Hahn, who's been on this show, and we've done some work together in the past, but this woman is dynamite. She is a mother. She is a wife. She is a business owner. She is revolutionizing regenerative medicine. She has an impact in a whole variety of ways. And if you look at concepts like dyslexia or plant-based medicine or any type of healing modality, this woman seems to be able to go there in depth and real conversation. So I always like when we can have those opportunities. And Danielle Fette, I am excited to be here with you today.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
So the only question that I ask every one of our guests is typically right after I do the intro. And it's, who are you in your words, my friend?
I am a very curious person who is always striving to learn more about myself and life in general. I care deeply about others and having like the best human experience possible. And through that mindset, like I'm always evolving and trying to grow both personally and professionally.
I love all of that. Curiosity is something that I think often can be a fleeting thing for people in life, right? We're born as this raw, real version of ourselves, curious and wondrous. And then sometimes for many people, that seems to get shut off. Though describing yourself as a curious person was one of the first things you said. So have you always had that connection to curiosity and wonder? And if so, how have you been able to utilize that as a superpower in your life?
Yeah, I've always beat to my own drum. I respected authority growing up, but I was really quick to form my own opinions, even as a young kid in school. And I feel very clever. I feel like I'm ahead of most others, looking down the path as to what's going to be or what's going to come. And I'm not afraid to dive headfirst and say, oh, I failed. I sucked at that. Let me pivot and do something else. So if you were to ask friends or family that know me, they're like, I think they really admire that I'm ballsy and I'm not afraid to dive into things, into different projects. And then if I get bored or I'm not feeling it, I pivot and I go on to the next best thing. So I'm definitely an adventurer and a risk taker. And then I couple that with my love for I've just always had a passion for medicine and wanting to help others. I really thrive and feel good when I'm in a place where I'm helping others. So it was natural for me to go into medicine.
So when you say you've always had a connection to medicine and healing others, like when did that actually start in your life, right? I mean, when is your first memory that you were like, this is important to me and this is something that I want to be able to do to help other people?
Early on, I mean, we're talking as young as I could possibly remember, like blood, vomit never grossed me out. If someone were to fall and get hurt, I was fascinated and would run and want to help them where other kids would run away. And then I realized, oh, not everyone's like me. I'm probably a little different. At Toys R Us, when I would go in there, I'd want to look at microscopes and, and doctor kits. And a lot of kids would want to go to the bike section. So I always was curious with medicine. And what's fascinating is nobody in my family is in medicine. So it's not like I had role models that were in medicine. And I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be like my parents. I just naturally was fascinated with science, how the world works, and wanting to help people.
So I often find that like sometimes there is this innate desire to want to help people, but there's also typically things that shape our desire to do that even more profoundly as life goes on, right? And you are somebody that I think cares very, very deeply think one of the things you and I've talked about is just this kind of concept in general of like wanting to make sure that we can help those that maybe need the help, right? Those that maybe have been overlooked or not had the support that they need in different periods, or are finally looking for pathways to heal and they really have never seen them before, right? What is it about your own story and experience that has continued to keep you connected to this work and reinforcing this desire and innate drive that you have to help others?
Like I said, I've always had this passion that I can't explain. It's just, I was born this way. And I know now as an adult looking back, it truly was my purpose to be the voice, to think outside the box in medicine and help people in therapeutic areas that we have not yet seen, because I'm dyslexic. And so growing up, I was treated really differently. I was put in special classes. I was made fun of. I couldn't read. Writing was hard. And I was constantly playing a role. Because I wanted to mask the fact I felt really smart, but I was so embarrassed in school. Now I know that's a superpower. And I look back and I'm like, wow, that little girl really, really, really wanted to go into medicine, because people laughed at you and said, you can't take tests. You can't go into school. I only got into university because I played lacrosse. Thank goodness. And then in college, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, come on, realistically, I can't take an MCAT. I can barely read, but I talked my way into a nursing program once I got into school for lacrosse. And then I talked through my exams and had people help me all along the way. So I'm very creative at figuring out how to get where I need to be through utilizing and asking for help.
Yeah.
Which I think has helped make me a better person as an adult. These life experiences, like I really have no ego. I'm the first one to try something, suck at it and move on and be okay with trying and failing. But again, it just goes to show like I really was supposed to be in medicine, because it wasn't an easy journey for me to get here. And then I took an atraditional path. I got into the sales end of things, which sounded crazy to me because I'm like, I care about people. I'm not going to be a slimy salesperson. But one of my professors was like, no. If you are in medical device, you're actually in the operating room. You're teaching the doctors about new technology. The way they learn about how to use these implantable devices is through people like you that would clinically go in and assist them. And I was like, well, that sounds really cool. And you don't have to clock in and out, and you don't have to pay attention to paperwork, which for nurses may sound great, but for someone that's dyslexic, crossing your T's and dotting your I's is really, really hard. So I'm like, and again, I beat to my own drum. So following rules of a hospital didn't really align when I was doing my rounds. I'm like, nursing is definitely not for me. So shout out to all the nurses out there. Thank God for you. The ones on the floor, we desperately need you. But for me, it wasn't a right fit. So I went into medical device, and I went on the sales and marketing side of things.
So I very much appreciate too that you brought in the dyslexia into this portion of the answer, right? I think it's a very interesting dynamic that, particularly when you and I were growing up, I think was often overlooked, misunderstood, not really diagnosed, right? We talked a little bit about that in our last prior conversation, because as you know, my daughter is dyslexic, and I very likely am dyslexic, just undiagnosed. So what I'm curious about for you is, at what point in your life were you able to identify, either through diagnosis or at least understanding, that you were dyslexic? And how did that reshape or shift any of your perceptions of the struggles prior?
My mom was a teacher, and she is the most compassionate, nurturing. I mean, she made me feel like I walked on water as far as my ability and my skill set. So I had that backing at home to feel like I could do anything. I mean, she literally made me feel incredible. So I would go to school and be like, why don't I feel like this at school? They did put me in special classes. I don't think diagnosing dyslexia back then was the way it was now. So I was in special classes, maybe people handicap. And then she put me in private school to try to make me feel more normalized with hands-on learning. And then I hid in high school because I had lacrosse. And it wasn't until high school that a boyfriend's mom, who specialized in this, did some tests and helped me recognize I had learning disabilities. But back then, like, I didn't get accommodations or anything. I just learned how to navigate through the system, whether it was cheating, lying. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I just learned how to get out of tests, how to go to the bathroom, how to get out of school if I needed to, I'm really good at looking over my shoulder at someone else's, answers. And you just have to do what you need to do to survive, and mask that you're embarrassed with who you are. I don't think any of my friends knew. It's not something I spoke about because I'm kind of the person that always focuses on things that feel good, and feeling like you can't read and write doesn't feel good. So I would focus on what I was great at: tennis, lacrosse, talking my way out of situations, life of the party, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But
well,
I didn't officially get diagnosed till I was older, probably a teenager.
Okay. But pre-adult is what it sounds like. You had some form of a diagnosis that you could understand it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I identify deeply with a lot of the things that you described. Like I say, I'm undiagnosed. I never even considered that I was until we found out that my daughter was. And then it was like, oh, this all makes sense, right? Like I can see it. And to your point exactly, I was just telling the story the other day. There were multiple semesters in college that I would like resell the books that I'd bought for the semester, and they'd still have the plastic on them. I never even opened the books because it would be so painful for me, and I could not learn or retain that way. So what would I do? I'd go to class, I'd listen, I'd talk to the professors, and do a lot of the things that it sounds like you did for coping, right? To better understand how I could navigate. But, especially given the fact that some of these like neurodiversities or blocks that we may have, going undiagnosed for huge periods of our life, or maybe ever, like for me, right? It can truly change the way we even view our abilities and how we give ourselves grace through what we had to overcome. Not as an excuse, not as something that's like, oh, well, this is okay. I'm dyslexic, so I can get away with all these other things. It's actually giving you a superpower in many ways, because you've had to learn to communicate and connect in ways that traditional words and language were not easily accessible for you.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like I look back, like I said, I'm always trying to become the best version of myself. We go through stages in life. And one of the things that I did to survive was change myself like a chameleon, according to who I was with, almost like a people pleaser. Even though I beat to my own drum and I would create my own rules in my head and I would rebel out appropriately, like I knew how to conform to situations, which probably made me amazing in sales. However, as an adult, I'm working on all the time. Like you don't need to people please. Like you don't need to mask anything. Like this is who you are. We're all vulnerable. Love me or not. Like I have great intentions and I'm going to rub some people the wrong way, and some people are going to love me, and that is okay. But growing up, I didn't feel like that because I wanted to hide the fact that there was an issue. So I would do whatever it took to not look negative in the eyes of others.
Well, I mean, you just gave a perfect descriptor of these little micro moments through our lives that shape and condition the way we are patterned to believe and patterned to operate, right? I mean, one of the things that I teach is this idea that we all want 4 things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel protected. And those are not the same thing. We all want to feel seen and understood. And we all want to feel connected, right? But the second we don't feel these last 2, the first 2 go out the window. And what do? We protect ourselves, right? It might be by becoming a chameleon. It might be by learning how to talk your way through things. It might be, right, in any one of the things that you just had listed. But all of that in some form or fashion is a form of armor. Because energetically, what you're trying to do is to protect yourself from judgment, criticism, shame, being different, overlooked, all of those pieces. But what's crazy is even once you have an intellectual understanding of what and how and why it's being shaped that way, it doesn't mean the cellular memory from all those years that you didn't understand weren't created, right? And that's also what you now are living in, is this intellectual belief that I no longer need to defend, justify, or protect. But yet there's still these patterns that are tied to cellular memory from periods before you were conscious to it. And these are pieces that shape how we view the world. And so what are some other areas that you believe as an adult you've had a ripple effect or pattern that carried forward from the areas that you either protected or compensated earlier in life because of your dyslexia?
That's a great question. I think my ability to be vulnerable and admit when I'm really comfortable with saying, like, I'm not sure. I don't know. I want to get better. I'm only human. Like, we can all become more self-aware and improve. And I love that about myself. I love the fact that I'm willing to be that person, and now running my own company and having direct reports, I feel that ripple effect. I feel my ability to acknowledge myself, my faults, love those faults, work on myself. I see that trickling down to my employees. And it just makes for such a beautiful work environment where people are not afraid to be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I've never really thought of myself that way. Or maybe I dive into my work and I'm a workaholic because I was afraid of X, Y, and Z. Or, it's just interesting to see patterns of why we operate and how we go through life and why, and what you can do to be like the happiest version of yourself. Because to me, at the end of the day, we're all here on round trip tickets. So you need to learn how to love yourself and to be as comfortable and joyful as possible. And that's what success to me is.
Yeah. By the way, my definition of success is joy, freedom, and fulfillment. Not a surprise that you and I are aligned there as well.
Yeah.
It's fascinating though, because even what you just suggested is your ability now to create an environment that exists with emotional safety gives your employees permission to be who they are and flourish in those dynamics. I have often talked about this concept of emotional safety, but there was a meme that we posted the other day, and I share this only because it's highly relevant to this moment. But it was something around like I don't remember the exact words, but it's about how to get the best out of your employees and the best out of your company, like it really requires leaders to facilitate an environment of emotional safety. And a post came in, and it basically was like, hey, this is a really interesting concept. What would this look like in a done for you type service? I was like, well, if that's what you're asking, you're missing the point. I responded with basically, I don't believe that this is something that is a done for you model. It has to be believed and embodied by the leadership, because they're the only ones who can facilitate it. Now, it can be learned, it can be trained, it can be adopted within a culture. That can be done with a done with you model, but a done for you never replaces the energy that the leader's putting out. And this in two sides of the street, working for others in the past and how much that was a dynamic that you struggled with. And now as a leader to see the impact of it. So can you maybe give us a little bit of contrast from those different experiences that you've alluded to so far in this conversation around this path as an employee and the lack of emotional safety maybe that existed in environments that were there, and the impact or difference that you've now been able to witness in what's possible as a leader yourself?
Well, I'm generous to a fault. Like I will do anything if I feel, and I think most people will, if they feel valued and appreciated. But working for corporate America, like early on, like my parents went through this horrific divorce. My dad disowned us. Money, I realized early on, I was privileged growing up, and then we had nothing. And I have to give the audience this context so you can appreciate like my journey. So for me, safety was if I can be, quote, successful in my corporate job and have that security, that will protect me from feeling of lack. So I was very young, right out of school, and I got this job making incredible amounts of money and working in the hospital and really making a difference in people's lives. And teaching them how to put a pacemaker that went into the brain for Parkinson's, and just really groundbreaking technologies. But I didn't feel fulfilled, and I didn't know why. And so I would job hop, and then I realized I felt the same at every company. It didn't matter how groundbreaking the product I was introducing was. I just didn't feel good. And then at every company, it was the same shit, new company. Everyone would complain at the corporate meetings. No one would speak up. They'd go on break or happy hour, and then everyone would start complaining about the company. And I'm like, this is the same thing, like company after company. So I realized that as employees working for a board that had, was tied to the bottom line, we were made to feel dispensable, like we didn't matter. We were just a number, and all the decisions were based on revenue. In my last job that I was at, I met my husband, and we were running the show there. I mean, we really put them on the map. He would invent the products that my team would sell. So I was on the sales and marketing side, the clinical education side. He would deal with regulatory, getting things FDA approved. And we cared so much about this product because we saw how it helped people. And then one day something happened where the company wanted to make a decision purely based on money, knowing it would hurt patients. And we said no. And we left on bad terms. It turned into a legal case. And I'm like, you know what? We care so much, and we have been doing this a really long time. We know we can invent products better, and we're so strategic. We can cut through all the BS of the red tape and layers of corporate America, and we can get these to the patients that can use these products faster than any other company can. Let's do it ourselves. So I think Clay and I, my husband and I, are yin and yang, and we just make the most incredible team. We started our company on our own, and we just had visions of we are not going to operate like everyone else. We're not going to take outside funding, which sounds crazy. Like I look back, I'm like, how did we do that? Because it's a lot of money to get something FDA cleared. But we did all the testing. We did everything ourselves. We got really strategic and smart, outsourced whatever we could to keep a lean company. So we contracted everything out. And then when the time was right to hire employees, we never went out like, we want a certain employee. We're going to try to find them. We stumbled across the right person and maybe the timing wasn't perfect, but we're like, this person's a keeper. They're incredible. They bring us life. We know they can add value. And we one at a time brought them on board. And now we have the most incredible team of humans that we just all divide and conquer. And I think what's important is morally, integrity wise, we're all aligned, but we all have very, very different skill sets. And we're not afraid to try and like help each other in different areas. So I think learning from working for others, seeing the shitty behaviors of the only thing that matters is money, and knowing you can make money and do right by others and do the right thing. And so that's what we're doing now.
I love that. I also love that you referred to you and your husband as yin and yang. And I have to say that in my own household, that is also very, very, very true. You know, and what's interesting is, at least in our case, for years, because of those patterns and armor and needs for self-protection, we didn't always see all of the gifts and the benefits of the differences of perspective. They would be points of contention in moments. You know, even to the point that you had suggested that you always find the positive in things. That's typically me. I typically find the light. I find the light in people and situations and opportunity. And my wife usually sees the darkness, right? And that's not to say that that's bad for her. It's that we've learned now how to navigate that intentionally, given what our own unique skill sets are. I'd love for you to speak to that, right? This partnership that you guys formed in a prior company with complementary skill sets and a passion for something that was so purposeful and impactful, and how you guys both came together and have learned to navigate the differences, really, again, through the lens of good versus resistance.
Well, let me preface this by saying my husband was the last person I ever thought I would date or marry. And when I met him, I was, in my mid-30s, living downtown Fort Lauderdale, Florida, living the single life, dating like crazy. And when I met him at the time, he was married. He had a 9-year-old. And we met and mutually bonded because we were trying to help a plastic surgeon who had a patient with a really rare, like flesh-eating disease. So we came together and bonded over wanting to help this patient. Whereas most people in corporate America would say, I'm not wasting all this time on one patient. I'm not going to get any like commission or sales from it. What's the point? Where every single week we would go into this plastic surgeon's office to help this patient just because we really cared and we believed that the product he had developed would help this patient. So we were very aligned in work. Where I doubted us was personally, and I'm being really raw, but he's from the Midwest. He's from Nebraska. I'm from New Jersey originally. He moved to Florida believing that the weather would help his wife at the time. They were high school sweethearts. They had a beautiful little 9-year-old. And when we befriended each other, he said, hey, listen, I really don't have friends and family in Florida. And my wife suffers with mental illness. If I ever needed you, like, I'm going to call. I'm like, absolutely. Oh my gosh, of course. And one day I got a call and she had actually took her life. Oh. And through that journey of helping him and work, somewhere along the line, we fell in love. And I was actually really ashamed and afraid. It didn't feel right, and he had to explain to me, like, I love her. I love her so much, but we didn't really have a marriage. We were together since we were young kids. And I doubted whether the relationship was right. And sometimes the universe has funny ways of telling you what you're going to do in life, whether you want to do it or not. I wasn't sure if he was the right one, and I wasn't sure if it was right for his daughter. And then one day I thought I was going to break up with him, which I probably shouldn't say, but now everyone knows. And the house burned to the ground. We were in a house fire. We lost our animals. I was woken up by ambulances, and I was in a fire truck. And I looked out the window, really not coherent because of the smoke. And I said, where is he going? And I saw him run. They're like, he ran into the house to get the animals. And I just saw the house engulfed in flames. And I remember thinking, and I get emotional thinking about it. Okay, whatever you believe in, higher powers, if you let this guy come out, I will never second guess this relationship. I will never cheat. I won't stray. Like, he's the one I'm supposed to be with. Please let him out alive. And he came out, and kind of the rest is history. That was my sign.
Wow.
I'm like, I love him and I respect him. And although we come from different worlds, and I was worried because I had shitty step parents growing up, and I wanted to make sure I was enough for this little girl who had been through so much. Mm-hmm. I just knew that was our sign to be together. Our working relationship was a non-brainer. Like, when we were together, magic happened. Like, we could run circles around 200 people in the company. And I'm like, gosh, what we're doing for this other company, it's great. We could move so much further and faster independently. At the time, we were really loyal to the company, though. But when things went south, it was like, okay, guys, here's your chance. And now looking back, I am just so grateful for all this experience. Like, thank goodness, because we are inventing products that I only could have dreamt were possible. And we're collaborating with some of the biggest institutions, government entities, to really not just explore how to help certain kinds of people, but like a lot of different disease states.
Yeah.
From regrowing organs to labs to you being in a blast from a bomb, how to reconstruct your body. And it's just really fun and invigorating and scary at times. But if those experiences hadn't existed, I wouldn't have two beautiful little girls now. I mean, the oldest one now, I adopted her. She's 25. My youngest I had with Clay is 12, and we have a beautiful life. And we had been through so much early on that we have such a bond and respect. But the working relationship was always there. It was like, when I met him, it was magic. I'm like, someone like you exists in corporate America and at your level and what you do, and you really care, and you want to invent products that the company may not want you to invent because it's maybe a very rare niche. Only a certain people could benefit from it, and it's not going to bring them enough revenue. And I just put him on a pedestal when it came to work, always. But now that we've been together for years, I just have mad respect for him as a human being in general. He's just such a solid, do the right thing, really strategic, awesome guy. Like, if you met him, you wouldn't know what he did for a living. He wears flip-flops, a Nebraska hat, and a t-shirt every day.
Well, based on the little bit that we've talked, I feel like we all would hang out and have a blast together. Just, it seems like there's so much overlap in so many topics. Yeah. I have to go back and not to sit in the dark for very long on this, but sometimes when people ask for a sign, it's like, they wake up and their cereal pours out perfectly, or like they just go smoothly with all green lights to work. And in your case, it's like, my house burned down. I'm losing my animals. I'm literally surrendering to whatever higher power I'm praying to at this moment, and saying, if this man walks back out of this inferno that is the house that took over, I won't question it again.
Yeah, like, I don't think at the time I thought it was a sign. At the time, I don't think I was like as spiritually evolved. So it wasn't like, this is my sign to be with him. It was more like, you don't realize what you have until it's gone. And I thought I lost him.
Okay. So that's where I was going with it, is that it's an interesting play on this like zero sum game. And almost what I say is like having a healthy relationship with mortality, but also what you just talked about, which is like, we often don't even fully realize the full depth of what we have until it's either gone or it's at threat of being gone. And so that's what I'd like to just spend a second on, is in that case, right? You lost everything. House fires, I've known a handful of people who've been through them. They literally, the recovery and the rebuild and the reestablishment and all of the little nuanced things that most people don't even pay attention to, that burns up in the fire, you have to replace everything you own, right? And then on top of that, it's also concreting a deeper relationship. Can you just talk a little bit about how did you navigate the loss of everything in your life all in one moment? And what were the decisions and choices you made that kept you going in that time?
Love kept me going, and a passion for wanting to be here. I love hard, and I am loved hard. So I always knew he absolutely would do anything for me. And when my husband loves you, I mean, he has a very small circle. It's really, people watching this that know us are going to laugh. But I knew what a good man he was. It wasn't easy, but the irony is I I'm a nurse and I worked in the burn units in the hospital when this went down. So I don't think you can ever prepare yourself. You can think what you think you're going to act like in a situation, but your adrenaline takes over and
it does.
You have no control of your body. It's like, it's not like, oh, I surrendered. No, I had no control of my feelings or what I was thinking. And I wasn't thinking this was a sign. I was just thinking this deep feeling of no matter what, I'm going to be with him because I love him, because I really thought I lost him. I mean, if you saw the house in flames,
yeah.
But when I am in a situation, people respond differently. And I know this from working with patients. People have different trauma responses. Just like our cells in our body respond to different environments differently, our souls are take over and respond differently in tragic situations. I'm a survivor. I'm a warrior. So like the way my body responds is to make stuff happen, to get out of it, to help everyone else around me. I don't panic. I just, something bigger than myself takes over. And that's probably why I'm good in working in trauma. I'm really calm and I just know what to do to get it done.
Yep.
So that's not something I can control, but it's just what happened.
No, but I'm really happy that you brought it there because I do think that there is a lot of awareness and insight that comes from your ability to know what you can handle, right? And what you're able to process and the states that you're able to move into. Like you, though I have not worked in trauma, I've been through a lot myself and I've been in a lot of situations where I've helped people with respective traumas, even on site with things. And there really is a difference between people. You almost described it too as how you were even talking, right? You're like, hey, I'm not even gonna know what I say half the time because I get into this flow and I surrender. And I find that those trauma situations are not much different. It's like, at least for me, I find myself so highly present that the awareness to everything that's happening around me, but the calmness that I exist and experience within it allows me to do that, right? And take those intentional steps that actually have impact and clarity. I've talked a lot about the nurse that saved my life on the day of my injury and the choice that she made to go in when she saw the literal life and limb scenario. And yet there was a nurse there that was with her that day as well, her other friend, who turned her head and went on with her way. I want to be clear when I say this, and every time I say this, I give this caveat. I have no resentment, no frustration to the person who turned her head. That was well within her right to do. But the difference between someone who goes into action and someone who doesn't is a big difference. And so for you to have been through all the work that you've done, working in trauma, working in the burn unit, having experienced what you have, this passion and care for all these unique diseases, not only did it take your ability and desire to help people in the medical field and your skill sets, but it fueled further passion for you to keep doing it. A lot of what you guys are doing today really is in the regenerative medicine side, helping people heal better and faster. You've alluded to this and talked about some of these products, but I'd like it if you could give, you gave a wide range of them, but like if you were to look at the overall purpose and mission for you and your husband and your respective companies and the types of products that you bring into the world, what is the focus? What is the impact? And ultimately, why are you guys doing what you're doing beyond what we've already talked about today?
I think we were meant to to be courageous enough, brave enough, bold enough, and wise enough to break out of conventional medicine and ways of thinking. Scientists, hospitals, like right now, I feel like it's broken. Healthcare is broken and people are afraid and people don't know what to do. But I'm a person that I don't like to complain without having a solution. Like, what's the point of complaining? Like, figure out how you're going to make it better, or what are you going to do about it? Talk to me about that. Talk to me about how you're going to handle the situation, but let's not bitch about healthcare, sucks and doctors are underpaid and work too hard and patients don't get time with doctors. So for me, it's like a way to provide value is coming up with solutions. How can I think outside the box to not put a Band-Aid on a disease, to not just cut unnecessarily? What can I do to help patients heal? And when I met my husband, it was like, I saw our products working. I saw them working. For example, the first one was a little boy that a dog ripped his ear off. And I love animals. That's probably a horrible example, but it was a dog that was abused. And there was a powder, we called it the magic powder back then. We sprinkled it on his ear and it signaled to the body to completely repair and remodel his ear. And then we were like, well, if the product we're working with recognizes injury in the body and then signals to your body how to heal and remodel, how do we make this product better? And how do we help different areas of the body? because there's injury all over the body. There's inflammation all over the body. What causes autoimmune? What causes cancer? It's when your cells aren't thriving. There's inflammatory properties taking place. Disease is your body not working properly. So not only how can we heal the skin or maybe like a hernia repair, but what else can we do with this kind of technology? And we have a lot of fun brainstorming, my husband and I, and thinking outside the box, where all the other companies, and there were several of them, were playing in the field of regenerative medicine, but they were all playing in the same sandbox, wanting to build the same sandcastles. And we're like, well, there's like 50 different wound dressings out there, and there's like 50 different hernia, I'm exaggerating, but
I know.
Hernia devices for hernia repair. But what if someone gets cancer? What if someone has urinary incontinence? What if someone has fibrosis, which is scarring in the lung? Like nobody wants to address it. And no one was bold enough to want to put their money into that research because they knew that the stocks would go up faster with the sure thing. We're going to get a Me Too product like everyone else, and we're going to take market share, and we're going to raise more money for the company. And our goal, like, we're not going to be here in 20, 30 years. So what's the point of investing in those other therapeutic areas? So for Clay and I, it was our purpose. It was a no-brainer. It wasn't like, let's talk about what we should do and what we should come up with. It's like, we know this technology we can make better through manipulating tissues, through engineering. We know we can make this product better. And then once it's better, how can we make it in different forms so we can help different areas of the body? So I'll give you an example. Our first product was a powder. They use that in wound care topically. And then I'm like, well, if my husband and I if we make this into a gel, which no one's done before, how can we inject it into different areas of the body to recognize injury and signal to repair? What happens if you have a heart attack? Your muscle dies. Could we inject it into the heart muscle? What happens if we inhale this into the lungs? Could it help with fibrosis so that your lungs don't get scarred? And this is literally what we do in it. We brainstorm how we can get products out there faster, or where we can take the technology, or who we can collaborate with to help us with our mission faster, whether it's the government and getting grants in certain therapeutic areas, or Wake Forest, which we this summer partner with them. And it's interesting, when I first started my career, I would watch YouTube. Dr. Tony Atala, I put him on a pedestal, like he was my God. And everything I learned, I always dreamt of meeting him to pick his brain because he was so forward thinking. I'm like, this stuff is like Frankenstein. You can grow body parts in the lab. I mean, he was growing heart valves in a lab in like 2009. I don't know if that's the exact year. I'm kind of vague with time, but
directionally accurate. Directionally accurate. Yeah, I got you.
I'm usually not right with my time management.
We're not going to fact check on this show, at least from the exact dates.
Thank you, audience. I appreciate that. But so it so happened the beginning of the summer, he reached out to us, we connected, and he wanted us to partner with him. And I just feel like we had such good intentions. We have such an amazing product. It was meant to be. And now we have access to Winston-Salem, Wake Forest, and all their incredible technology and researchers to really do what we've always wanted to do, which is to inject bladder walls. Will that help with incontinence? Do people really need all these surgeries? Like, why are people having all these surgeries? Why are people putting all these drugs into their body? There's a time and a place, and I'm not really quick to jump on the pharmaceutical bandwagon. So it's been a wild ride, a really inspiring ride. And basically, we invented this technology. We develop products in different disease states, different therapeutic areas. And so we have a lot of different companies under FetTech, which is the company that owns the patent on the technology. Like even aesthetics. So making your skin look and look better, and also become stronger and healthier, because as we age, our skin's our biggest organ in our body. It's not just a vain thing. I mean, I love to look beautiful, but I also want to age as healthy as possible. Mm-hmm. And our skin breaks down just like every other organ in our body. And it's like, well, what are you putting on your skin? Would you put that on your pancreas? Would you put that on your spleen? If not, you probably shouldn't be putting it on your skin. If you can't eat it, I wouldn't be putting it on you. So it's been really exciting because we're launching a product in aesthetics, which is gel-based, that they'll use post-procedure to minimize downtime and have longer-term benefits for patients. It's interesting, though, because as someone that cares so much, I've had to be in the closet most of my career because people reach out like, you're my only hope. My dad's going to lose their leg, or they have a pressure ulcer. And if I don't use your product, they're going to amputate. And it would keep me up at night. And this is really how I got into my spirituality and looking myself in the mirror, like how I was meant to do this. How am I going to survive this? Because the pressure was just so intense. And it brought me to a dark place early on when we started our company. So I would hide the fact that we did this for a living. And people would ask me, like, what do you do? And I would say, I'm a nurse. And they'd say, where do you work? I'm like, oh, I float around. Oh, what areas of the hot burn and trauma? And I would minimize it because I knew I couldn't help everyone because of regulatory issues. And we're classified as a medical device. And my husband would be like, you think you're Tinkerbell, but you can't be, because you can't just sprinkle your powder and help everyone heal, because we'll go to jail and we'll lose our business. Like so that part was really hard for me. But now that we have the launch of the aesthetics, it's kind of like a shift in my mindset, because now I want to shout off the rooftops. We have this amazing product. It's a cash business. It can be used in aesthetics. And the truth be told, I'm obsessed with this product. But from a business perspective, it's so special because it's a cash business in aesthetics. So now we can take that revenue and reinvest in all the other projects we want without getting an outside funding. So we aren't answering to a board. So I'm pretty excited about everything that's happening right now in the land of business for FetTech.
Well, I mean, it sounds extremely interesting on so many levels, and exciting, obviously, for the opportunity that you guys are shifting into right now. You speak about wound care and you speak about some of these different situations. And again, this interview is about you, but I want to tap into your expertise, because I've also lived through a lot of these things, and I've done almost every healing modality that exists out there to get myself out of pain, to get my body and my cells reconnecting and regenerating and going in the right direction. And by the way, when I say I've done it all, that doesn't mean that I don't have room for improvement either. It just means I had to test it all for just pure survival. But, I came home from the hospital, for example, and I didn't have skin on my arm for 3 weeks because the swelling was so bad. They couldn't do skin grafts. They couldn't do any of those things, right? I had raw open muscle, right? There've been multiple times in my life that I've experienced things like that, as well as residual pain and implications as a result of like other pieces due to my injury. So anything around healing alternatively creates like this deep level of fascination for me. So I know that you're excited about this shift into the consumer market. But if you were to look at a singular product, it sounds like the powder might be one that you are referencing, a singular product that you guys have created, brought into the world that you are most excited about and has had the most impact to date. What would that be? And what is its specific use case for?
Well, the technology I'll rewind. The technology we invented is called the multi-tissue platform.
Okay.
And the goal of inventing this product was to make the most potent product out there that could really signal to your body on like what to do when there's trauma or injury to it. Okay. So naturally, like when you're injured and if you are healthy enough to heal, your body goes through this inflammatory response. You get redness, you get pain, and then you form scar tissue. And our scar tissue is really our body's way of preventing us from getting an infection. So it's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But true regenerative medicine, and that term's thrown around very loosely nowadays, but in my mind, regenerative medicine is using your body's own biology to repair the injury.
That's how I feel. That's by the way, consistent with my definition. I'm so happy that you clarified that.
Yeah. So I don't know how long ago did you have your injury?
It was 32 years ago, something like that, 32 years ago.
Back then, we weren't aware of signaling and truly remodeling and repairing. Yep. So there wasn't a way to help you with your pain and inflammation. Mm-hmm. Our way of helping a patient was how fast do we put a patch on you so you don't get an infection and die? Mm-hmm. So there were skin grafts you can do, which would take your own body's skin and put it on top. Or there were like cadaver or other products where literally we're creating a patch. And my husband's worked in this space for a while. And through the evolution of time, we found out that different areas where you can create a patch, depending on the body part or the organ that you're using, not all organs are created equally. And tell me if I'm geeking out too much.
By the way, I asked the question for a reason, like geek out, because I like this stuff fascinates me.
Okay, so yeah, you're going to have to help me.
And for any audience that doesn't want to hear this next portion of it, I'm sorry. This is where I'm going to be selfish for a minute, because I just love geeking out on knowledge like this.
Okay, so with the evolution of products, we realize, in some of these patches, there are some signaling components that are telling the body, let's bring in new cells, let's incorporate into the patch, and let's try to heal this faster. So my husband was just really clever and figured out a way to focus on the signaling and the binding to signal to the body to heal faster and not the patch part of it, because there were so many patches on the market. And then he was like, well, everything that's used on the market now is devised from one tissue source, meaning one body part. So whether it's like the most common product when you were probably in the hospital was Integra, which was from an calf of a cow. And they would iron that out, make a sheet and patch it on patients. So through my husband's engineering background in this space, he would tinker around and say, okay, not all tissues, not all organs are created equally. They all have different functions. They all have different biomolecules. How do we get the most robust biomolecules all in one place? So when we deliver those into the body, your body then is told what to do to repair. And he looked at every single tissue, and I'll never forget, he came home, he was like, oh my gosh, I know what to do. I know how to make this better. I know how to make it so bioactive. And we were the first and only company to combine, and we still are, more than one tissue source, because the idea is to make a custom blend from multiple tissues to give the body more of the good stuff it could potentially use to heal. Because here's the truth, Brian, I don't know what your body exactly needs. I know what your body has in it, kind of. But just like supplements or anything else, like what you need to heal is different than what my cells need to thrive. You as a human being walk into a room, and what's going to make you thrive as a human is different than me. Now, there's some common denominators, right? Like love, peace, maybe something you're interested in. But there's also a fact, like I don't mind loud noise. Maybe loud noise bothers you. Well, our cells are the same way. So the concept was, we don't know really what our cells need to work at the maximum capacity. So let's give the body a bunch of stuff at the injury site that it could potentially use. Let the body pick and choose what it needs and when it needs it. We know we're not damaging anything because we're giving you everything that's naturally occurring in your body. We're just doing it in a very clever way. So now that there's an injury, it'd be like my house burnt down to the ground, and instead of putting tape around it so that no one falls into the hole to get hurt, which would be like a scab, now we're giving hammers and nails and a construction crew and instructions on how to remodel the house. So I look at our product as that. We're giving the body the tools and instructions it needs and helping the body to repair itself. And so that it's hard for me to, and I'm giving all this geeking out information because it's hard for me to say, this is what I'm most excited about. I'm excited about different products for different reasons. I was excited about the wound product because as a wound nurse, I know there's a lot of wounds that won't heal if they're infected. Geographic areas on an elbow that moves. It's really hard to move if your body part or joint's moving around. Wounds are all irregular shaped. I love how the powder conforms and how fast it works. And, but now in gel form, we just basically took the powder, put it in gel form, and now we're going to be able to inject it. Aesthetics I'm excited about because selfishly I want to look good. And I want the revenue so I can put it back into the business to help with the other areas. The other things, like I have friends that have cystic fibrosis. You don't think I want to put the gel in a nebulizer and see if I can heal them, but I have to go through the proper regulatory pathway. So for me, it's not a matter of like, which product do I like more? It's like, they all have a place in my heart because I believe in them and I know they work. We've proven concepts in a lot of these different therapeutic areas. And for me, the hardest part is like being patient, the most impatient person, and science and getting medical devices cleared takes for flipping ever. So that's hard for me. Knowing I can help people and that I have to control myself so I don't get in legal trouble and that I have to wait for the process to play out. That's really hard.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. It sounds to me like the technology you created weaves through all of your products. There's just different applications for them. And
Correct.
so thank you for going down the path that you did, because essentially every product is a byproduct of the technology that was created. It's just now the delivery method and the specific intended use case. That's the difference. Okay, perfect.
Correct. So it's the same technology. We put it into different, whether it's a powder or, a gel, and we're coming out with a sheet, but it's the same technology. And we tinker around and change the way it's delivered to the body depending on your body's needs and what makes sense.
Okay, that totally understand. And now my brain is caught up and registered. So you gave an example earlier where a kid was bit by a dog and his ear was torn off. And you said that these
I wish I
signaling.
didn't use that example because I'm really the biggest advocate of animal rights. I love animals. So,
Well, by the way, I am too. We foster, but accidents happen. My daughter got bit in the face with a dog that we had that was a foster that we took care of. Like, accidents happen. It doesn't mean that the dog is vilified or it's all bad. So I appreciate the sensitivity there, but the focus in this case, I think, is on the kid for a second, right? Like I hear you, but I'm not like trying to vilify the dog. You said that it activated the signaling properties that would basically convince the body that it needs to regenerate the tissues for the ear. Now, in that particular case, just because I don't understand the full depth of your technology, does it activate to create healing on the wound site, or does it actually regenerate the cells to remake an ear? Like, give a little bit of context, because it's a little different in which one is the case.
Okay, so earlier I said when you get injured, your body naturally, if you're healthy enough to heal, will go through that inflammatory response where your body is signaling and then forming scar tissue. So the material we were using would tell your body, don't heal like that. We're going to heal differently. We're going to recruit stem cells to the area, and we're going to give those cells what it needs to know how to reconstruct and remodel without scarring or minimal scarring.
So does an ear redevelop? Yeah, I do.
I have, so what's interesting, and depending on the hospital and the case, unfortunately, hospitals try to get patients out of the hospital as fast as possible. And that's because of reimbursement. That's because when you go into a hospital gets a flat fee based on why you're put in the hospital in the first place. So they want you out because every day you're there, you're taking away money from what they could get. So I'm only saying that because you could use our powder from the beginning of the injury all the way till it fully heals completely. And that's what would give you the best results. But usually what they'll do in trauma is they'll use our product to jumpstart the healing, to heal differently, to fill it in as much possible. And instead of waiting till the end, till it like beautifully remodels over it and you have that perfect, beautiful epithelialized skin, they'll usually use a patch. They'll do a skin graft. They'll go into the OR because then they can get you out faster. So that's always interesting and frustrating at the same time.
I'm completely following you though. And that's, I think, what I was trying to ask is if time and application were consistent, in theory, your product helps regenerate whatever was injured, formed, or removed in some capacity. So to the concept, and you had talked about the person that you were studying, the person that you like obsessed over, who was basically generating organs and limbs, 2009 or whatever you referenced, the directional accurate date. I'm looking at this from a purely curiosity standpoint. Let's say that I had this happen to me today. I was 7 years old today. I had my left arm completely severed from my body, reattached or not. Your product will not only help activate, obviously, all of the healing properties, but in theory, based on what you've said and how the product works, parts of my arm would regenerate in a way that I wouldn't have had the privilege or opportunity to do so based on the technology that was available to me then.
The technology back then, we're just putting a patch on it. And that's probably, I can't see your arm, but it's probably like around the bone. Right. So our material would actually fill in that volumetric tissue loss. So you would get like that beefy, like the tissue that was lost would have been remodeled. So the muscles and the tissue that would, because again, my tricep was torn it's off label. Like I can't really promote that we're regrowing muscles and body parts. I mean, our indication is to cover and protect the wound. However, clinically, I have seen, and I have had the other doctors tell me that, in trauma, when a chunk of your body is on the side of the road and a patient comes in, if they use our material, it completely fills in.
Okay. So that's what I was asking. Again, whether or not they're functional, whether or not they connect. I'm not trying to get into all the weeds of everything, but the tissue gets regenerated.
My biggest aha moment when I realized, like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm meant to do for a living. Earlier on, I was at Walter Reed Hospital. That's a hospital in DC where the young soldiers come blown to pieces. I mean, it's the biggest trauma hospital for our soldiers overseas. And this poor kid, 18 years old, went over a mine and his legs were blown off. And 18, your penis is a big deal. And his penis was mutilated from the explosion. And our goal was just to give him a penis, like just to give him, function was the last thing. Yeah. We just wanted him to look down and see a body part.
Yeah.
And not only did it grow back, but he got function in it.
Wow.
And we were like, Okay. And that was the first, this was 2010. I was like, we can get nerve, we can get function back.
That's unreal.
I was shocked. So through experiences, trying products, we have a product that can't hurt anyone. Yeah, we've used it from neonates to the sickest, like geriatric patients, tens of thousands of patients, never an adverse event. So we had the confidence along the way to try it on and push the envelope on, there's nothing else that's going to help this patient. We have nothing to lose. Let's try it. And through those experiences, you learn. You learn about best practices, what works. And every time I use that on a patient, I'm like, wow, did that really just happen clinically? So that's helped with the evolution of where we could potentially take this product. And that's early on what truly happened. Like my husband's like, well, if it does nerve regeneration, like brain injury, spinal cord injury, why aren't we pushing the envelope here in the company? Like, nope, hernia repair. That's where we want to focus. And that's what all the companies do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm grateful that you're going down the paths that you are and explaining this. And again, I want to be really clear. I don't take anything you say as a brand promise. I don't see it as marketing or misrepresentation. You're answering questions based on real case studies that you've experienced and witnessed. And you're talking about the potential, not the guarantee, right? Because to your point, everybody responds differently. So I think expectations versus reality are always important to like reframe. But at the same time, what I'm appreciative of is that you have a product that's real, is having the impact. You do have applications and belief. You have a multitude of case studies. But to your whole point on liability in a highly regulated industry, you have to be cautious in how you communicate around it. And so for those reasons, especially, I just want to say thank you for indulging me in that part of the conversation and recognize that anybody who's listening, just take that with a grain of salt and a caveat that there are no promises and guarantees on this. However, the product is real. How now, if someone like myself, right, somebody is long past the healing from the physical nature within the body, but it's still a atypical type body structure, or you saw what my arm looks like. Are there applications for scars, treatments, other pieces? I think that obviously with what you're doing with skin, looks like huge promise in the future. So where are opportunities for people that could still benefit from regenerative medicine, even if their body technically is healed?
We're looking into scar revisions now. That's a subject that's near and dear to my heart, especially with kids that have been in fires, because as they grow, they need surgical revisions to stretch that skin, which is painful and horrible. So we are looking into that. I haven't until I see something, I can't preach it or promote it. Logically, it should make sense, but you would have to create some sort of channel or injury. Like you'd have to microneedle or do something to create a little bit of injury. Else, what is my material? What is my product signaling to? It's not recognizing an injury. So there are some challenges around it, because right now if I put my material on you, it would have to, how would it communicate? And would it recognize an injury to want to heal it in the first place?
Right.
You would have to create some sort of injury.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that there's ways in the future to explore potentially using our product in combination with other products. Like, for example, maybe this is again off-label. These are just conversations in my head that I would like to explore clinically and from a regulatory perspective with clinical studies. But maybe with fat grafting, if you were to mix our technology with fat grafting, could you potentially have more fat take, and could it actually bulk up an area so that it looked like there was less of a deficit? I have seen doctors do that off-label in the hospital. And that's one of the things. I'm an open book. I told you before we recorded, like, you can ask me anything, but it does stress me out because I have to be so mindful of the law and what I can and cannot say. But I'm sharing this because in medicine, you have to be your own patient advocate, and you have to ask questions. You have to feel comfortable asking all sorts of questions. And here's why. Doctors are trained by pharmaceutical companies that write the textbooks. Doctors don't know the answers to everything because, number one, they're human. Number two, they only know what they were taught, and they're only taught what they're legally allowed to be taught. So there's a lot of things I wish I could share that I can't. And there's a lot of but I think that's like that for most pharmaceuticals and most products in general. So as a human, it's very important to be curious and ask questions and do your own due diligence and your own research, because I can promise there's products out there that aren't being used maybe because of reimbursement or a financial reason, or maybe the doctor just didn't learn about it in medical school.
Yeah. I'm really grateful for your passion to help people on this healing path and for the technology that you and your husband have created and are bringing into the world. I mean, truly, as somebody who has had to go through multiple healing modalities, understanding how to regenerate cells and really putting myself through the ringer, it's amazing to see that people in the future and right now who already can access your amazing product can have different healing results in these crazy traumatic situations. I mean, the story you told of the soldier being able to like regrow and have a functioning penis is like that as simple as that might seem in some cases, like that is profound for an 18-year-old man who hasn't even begun his life yet. And what that means for his identity and his sexual relationship and the way that he's going to communicate through the world. Like, you're saving and impacting people's lives in a really cool way. What element or factor do you believe that the abstract creativity connected to dyslexia has served you in helping get creative in creating solutions that you bring to the market?
I'm really good at reading people. And in the business world, it can be really stressful to navigate who's authentic and genuine and wants to support your business versus who's in it for a piece of it or wants to take you down. And that has really helped me navigate. And my husband just is brilliant like that too. So we're a force to be reckoned with. I've had more learning curves along the way than him because I'm more trusting. I want to trust more people naturally than my husband does. But we know what to do medically. It was the entrepreneurial, the business side, I think, that my dyslexia has helped me be okay with messing up, learning, picking myself back up, and becoming better. Because you really have to be a fighter to make it in this world, and especially not taking outside funding. I mean, there was a period of time my house was in foreclosure, my car got repoed. I know other parents were looking at me like, what's wrong with her? I live in an affluent area, and there was no shame in my game. Like we had a purpose, and I'm sure I was judged for a couple of years because I went from having a very prestigious career, investing in real estate to like literally putting it all on the line for our company. And there was a couple of years where, man, we didn't have anything. I mean, my poor oldest daughter, I joke, I'm like, you think you got the shaft, but little do you know what your life's going to be like. But she watches the 12-year-old living this lavish life, and she's like, I didn't get any of that. I'm like, yeah, you were lucky to get one pair of sneakers. And we were doing it with a purpose and a mission, knowing we would get better. But if I did not have dyslexia, I don't think I would. I mean, I can't predict, but I have a lot of perseverance and a lot of balls to try something and be okay with messing up and then trying it in a different way. And I'm also extremely resourceful. Our company operates based on contracts and being resourceful. What can't we do ourselves, and who do we need to bring in who can do it better for us?
Yeah.
And if we weren't good at identifying that, we wouldn't have been a two-man show for so long. People are like, you got a product, you invented a product and gotten it more than one. FDA cleared, just the two of you. Like, that's kind of sounds like I'm lying. I would have thought someone was lying if they told me that coming from corporate America and the medical device world. But we did it, and I'm really proud of us. But without that dyslexia, I don't know if I would have had the confidence or the ability to handle what life threw at me now running my own company.
Yeah. What do you believe is your biggest problem or challenge in life or business today?
Currently, I'm trying to identify when I have like an intuitive lead on things, like intuitively, and sometimes my mind, it doesn't add up. Like I'll get a gut feeling like I should be doing this, but on paper, it doesn't make any sense. And I'm learning to trust my intuition over my logical brain. So that's right now what I'm working on.
That's
and
like
now
really,
I'm really aware of it, but it's still hard. Your brain plays tricks on you. And if you give it a couple of seconds, it's going to convince you why you're wrong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's why I think so many people have lived behind intellectual armor for so many years and lose connection to their ability to trust their internal voice and guidance system. I love that you're able to recognize that the more you're able to challenge and trust your intuition over your intellect, the more you actually are getting to fulfill who you are and what you want. There's a lot of power in that statement. When did you become aware that that was an area of focus for you? And how are you actually navigating that dynamic right now in your life?
Before COVID, when we were at our lowest point, I mean, like I said, home repo or car repo, foreclosure, house, like no money. And knowing we had so many patients to help. And it's like when they say you're surrendering some more. But sometimes when you're your lowest low, you have no choice but to realize, okay, I'm meant to do good things and I don't know how. So you start soul searching. And I think most people that want to follow joy and want to follow the intuition and spiritually like surrender to something bigger than yourself, whatever you call it, whether it's God, the universe, a collective energy, it comes from a place of like you not knowing what else to do. And you want, and you know, but you know, you want more. So that for me is what happened. Like I hit rock bottom. I thought I was failing miserably at being a wife, a mom, my career. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I just leaned into like faith and meditation, and whether it was an app on my phone that could help me with like, I mean, you name it, astrology, human design, self-help books. And I think I always had it all along where I believed in something greater. I had a lot of faith in something bigger than me, but I had to learn how to tap into it and trust it. So I like to make things happen, and I like them to happen yesterday. So I thought in life, you muscle through it. And now I'm learning, if you follow the joy, and if it's not a fuck yes, it's an absolute no.
Fuck yes.
Fuck yes means yes. If it's not a fuck yes and I'm not excited,
it's a
like
no. Yeah.
It's a no. It's a hard no until you feel it's a fuck yes. And so I've had to learn that because my head is so clever that it would play mind games on me. And I would convince myself, you need to work with this person because these are all the things they can help you with. These are all the possibilities. And then they got to I'm like, well, I'm not excited to be with them. And I don't really feel like I can trust them. But Danny, they have international contacts. And, you know, so you learn to pay attention to those things when you fail.
I agree.
And, you know, so that's what brings me here today.
That's beautiful, by the way. And that is one of my favorite things to work with clients on. And I don't use this with everyone, but very often I use the fuck yes. And if it's not a fuck yes, it's a no, to get people to like really center and connect to what is important to them. Right? What actually drives them, what lights them up, what keeps them going. And so you talked about that dynamic like really beautifully, right? And we do have intellectual and emotional and physical narratives that all try to take over and convince us of what's real, often when we don't actually see it. This, I think this is probably the last question I have for you before I start to bring this to a wrap. And I may have to have you back in the future because I love to geek out on this kind of stuff. But I don't like asking closed-ended questions. I just don't know how to ask this in a different way. So I give that caveat for you and for the audience. Do you believe that people and our bodies are capable of healing themselves without outside influence?
I'd have to clarify what you're asking. So like without like things that are recognized as foreign to our body?
So I think what I'm getting at is I have a belief that disease and injury and healing are also directly correlated to the level of alignment, congruence, overall health that we have, right? And so we can manifest pain, we can manifest disease, right? We can create these blocks. My physical pain was a manifestation of emotional pain that I couldn't get to for 31 years as a result of some of the original pieces. And so what I'm asking is that in an extreme woo-woo mentality, there's a belief that there's never a need for any medication, any medical intervention, because with the right intent, the right consciousness, we can heal ourselves. Now, there's limits to that, obviously, right? Trauma is a situation that you get your arm ripped off. You're not going to heal from that unless you stop the bleeding. But I guess what I'm asking is what power do you believe we all possess to be healing properties for ourselves, as well as being able to use products like yours or others to help be additive in the process? But where do you sit with human capacity and our healing ability?
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple different questions within that question. I think that our brains can control a lot, but I also think chronic disease versus acute tragedy is a little bit different.
Very different.
For chronic disease, there are a lot of factors that play into cancer, autoimmune, mental health. And for me, I personally believe it boils down to your cells being put in environments where they're not happy. So they're acting out, whether that is from mold toxicity or mildew or inflammatory foods or emotional stress that's causing inflammation in your body. There's a lot of different things but as humans, if we're a little bit more educated, we can help control. But I think it's like a collaborative approach. It's not just one thing that's going to help control that chronic disease. So chronic disease, in my opinion, is easier. An acute trauma where your arm's ripped off, if you really truly want to heal it, I think that there's more natural ways through regenerative medicine to repair and remodel injury. But I don't think that your mind can grow back an arm, for example.
So I agree with everything you're saying. I think the piece that I was trying to get with clarity, because I think the acute stuff I know, right? Like that is obvious to me. It was the deeper side, because I think there's a lot of people that end up in a disease state as a byproduct of choices, environments that they've not created the ability to move, right? And you articulated that so beautifully. Your products just help move things really quickly, particularly with acute things, but also with other areas of injury. And so I think it's amazing. You know, you and I had talked earlier.
Important. I just want to say this, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but like I've had melanoma. My sister had breast cancer a couple years ago, and I don't want people to blame themselves for having chronic disease. It's not your fault. It's just there's resources out there. There's places you can go to learn a little bit more, because it's not just cut and dry. It's not just all of a sudden you got cancer. You know, I think that these things over like 10 years,
yes,
are, you know, and there's signs, and our bodies scream in certain ways. Maybe you're getting constant migraines. Maybe you get dizziness when you stand up. Maybe you're getting chronic yeast infections. Maybe you're getting rashes. Maybe your allergies are getting worse. So I think our bodies scream at us in different ways, but we don't know how to listen for them to say, hey, there's something not right. This food's not agreeing with me. This toxic relationship's not agreeing with me. You know, your apartment was filled with mildew and it's affecting you now. But we don't, as humans, we're so busy that sometimes it's hard to pay attention. And I learned this the hard way as a patient. So this is not something I'm preaching. Like, I'm still trying to learn this and be so self-aware that if something doesn't feel right, guess what, guys? It's not right. And you need to pay attention, because if you don't, it's like throwing a little stone, a pebble against a window. It may not break your windshield, but I'm going to keep throwing. Your body's going to throw it harder and harder and bigger until you have no choice but to pay attention. Because at the end of the day, our bodies want to thrive. Our bodies are genius.
Yes.
And if put in the right environment, they will do what we want them to do. And they're trying to constantly communicate with us saying, hey, something's not right. But we're overlooking it and we're waiting till it's too late. And they're saying, put 10 medications into the stomach and you're having massive surgery and you need radiation and you need chemo. It's because, again, healthcare is broken. We're not going in saying, what are you eating? Do you know different seed oils are not good for you and they cause inflammation in your gut? Do you know oral hygiene is tied to your overall well-being? Do you know how important it is to get sleep? Like, that's not a joke. Like, it should be mandatory for everyone, 7-8 hours. Like, it will dictate and change your life if you get sleep. So I get really passionate about the subject because I don't want people to be upset with themselves. But if you are sick and you are listening to this, there are things you can do. Just go on Instagram and look up. Dr. Keneally is one of my favorites. I put her on a pedestal. She's in Newport Beach and she thinks outside the box, and she's an MD, but is not afraid to use traditional forms of medicine to help people heal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people like that, but they're fighting the battle alone, because not everyone wants to invest their time and money educating people. It's easier to write a script and see the next patient.
Thank you, Danielle, for interrupting me, because I also know that the way that I said it as a result of choice could have seemed or been received like there was blame being placed. And that is totally against what I believe as well. I'm also about removing the shame and the blame. It's even in the language that we use around helping people identify and remove the trash from their past. Is the number one rule is you have to know that the trash from your past is not your fault. It just becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it, or you start burying others in yours, right? It's no different in this capacity, is that we all have that ability. It's a matter of, are we putting ourselves in a place where we're aware of what our body is pointing us towards, and are we listening and trusting it to actually honor what our body needs, right? And that comes across in so many of the beautiful examples that you listed. So I'm happy that you interrupted me and gave that clarification, because you and I are aligned on that belief. And that was really the intent of asking that question, was from a place of empowerment, not from a place of shame or blame, right? Is I want people to recognize.
I blame myself as a patient, and you think, like, what did I do wrong? How did this happen?
Well, it's what society teaches us. It's all the shame and blame that exists from the time we're yay high, right? And all the things that we're told not to listen to in ourselves and sit down and shut up that just creates these patterns, right? Again, it's so deeply ingrained and woven. But again, what does it come down to? The power of choice. Right? The power of choice. If you decide you're going to pay attention, and that's what's so beautiful about this. Now, I know that we had talked earlier and we've shared tons of awesome information. We're going to make sure that all your links are available online for people to be able to go check out your business and your products. But this now cash business that's going to be skin products and more commercially available, could you just let people know specifically what that's called, where they can find it? And then I've got one other thing before we wrap and we will be done, my friend, but I'm really grateful for your time today.
If you go to our main website, FetTech.com, which is F as in Frank, ETTECH.com, that's like the parent company. And then you'll see links to all our other companies. StemSys is our wound care business. Viromed, which we didn't even talk about, that's our viral stuff. There's no products yet approved, but we are working with the government on the viral side of things, which we discovered by accident right before COVID. And Rayagel is the aesthetic gel. And I would say any product you're interested, if it's Rayagel, write in. You could be one of the first to get to use it. We're launching it in a month or so. But if you're a patient, the best thing you can do is show your doctor the information, and your doctor can write in and email the company, and we can help facilitate that. But also keep in mind, it's kind of dictated if it's approved at that hospital you're at or not, or if they want to use it outpatient wherever you're going or not. So it can be a frustrating journey, but I would say information is power. So to just give the information to your healthcare provider, and hopefully it will pan out.
And I think that last statement's pretty all-inclusive as it relates to the medical system in general, right? And the diplomacy of navigating it. But again, if you're an empowered patient, if you're an empowered human, then you can advocate for yourself, and you can do so in a way that hopefully will lead to the best results for you. I might have to get myself some of this Rayagel. My wife has been telling me, because we've been together for a long time, she's starting to see the wrinkles really come out, and these ridges and frown lines, and my skin isn't nearly as healthy as it could be. And she's been telling me I need to improve my skin health and skin regimen routine, and I'm still not doing it, probably because I haven't believed in any product yet. But I think yours might be the one.
Yeah, I mean, and I discovered this during COVID, where I couldn't get Botox, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't know I had all these wrinkles. And I also love all things natural. So I'm not going to lie and pretend I don't like to look good, but I love natural things too. So I would start microneedling my face, which I do not recommend because you can get an infection, but I was microneedling my face and I was putting the product on, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I was really feeling myself. And then one thing just led into another, and now we're in the aesthetic market, and it's an awesome product.
Dude, I really appreciate you being here with us today. You brought so much knowledge. I love the work you're doing in the world, and I love who you are as a human, because your heart is palpable, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And for those of you who just watched Danielle flip her lid and jump inside, we heard how a story of unknown dyslexia shaped this resilience and advocacy for herself in a way that allowed her creativity and conviction and drive to find ways to get solutions done. And with the grace that came with that later, and the ability to recognize that what you're about to lose might be the greatest reminder of what to focus on in terms of importance. Her house, her dogs, all literally burned to the ground, but it launched a marriage and a partnership that now is having a ripple effect through the world in terms of how people are healing faster and better through FetTech and all of their amazing products. But what she's ultimately talking about is honoring your cells to find and create and live and exist in joy as frequently as possible. And the more frequently we do that, the more empowered we are to heal ourselves. And so if you take anything from her, trust your intuition over your intellect. Start listening to yourself and believe that you're worth advocating for. It might require you to flip open your lid and scan your can, but you can get there.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.